when I said we have to find what's common, we have to be PLCing and looking at the essential questions, they had decided to do K2 and 3-5, and again, look at what was common. So we could look at running record data, and we could look at other data across grade levels. And then they were able to bring that to district grade level PLCs during early release time. So similarly at the elementary school.
I wondered that too, being a fifth grade teacher, is the vertical conversations, especially when people are trying to plan assessments for backwards design off the Common Core, when you unpack the standards, and to understand the difference between the fourth grade standard, which is very similar to the fifth grade standard, the verbiage that's in it, what are we actually looking for? I don't know if we do that enough, because we meet obviously with our fifth grade a lot, but to make sure that, not necessarily the resources that we're using, but are we addressing the standard the way we're supposed to be? And then I guess the question would be, from the sixth grade at the middle school to the fifth grade at the elementary, we don't have conversations, you know, it's kind of like, oh, this is the way the elementary is, and the middle school, this is how they're doing it. But to make it more feasible for the kids to transition better, are we teaching it spiraled the right way? And just the method of the pedagogy of how are we teaching it? So that's kind of a question too, PLC. Vertically, I like to hear that you're doing it and how you guys did it too. I wonder how you can even bridge that gap from school to school to help the kids transition.
That's a great question. What we have done is, part of our early release time we have done in building, but part of it will be district-wide. And so what I've coordinated with the high school principal is, okay, this vertical day we're going to be 6 through 12. But then we have to coordinate and plan that out in terms of, you know, what are kind of some of the conversations that we're going to have and what are we going to focus on. Those I definitely stop. The high school principal and I, we will kind of divide and conquer and get on a rotation and step into those. And I can tell you, and then upcoming we'll be doing with elementary. But I can tell you that staff feedback has been very positive on that. They've been anxious to do that. They see the need to connect, you know, outside of the silos of our building. And in fact, at CISA, one of the things we're talking about is for singleton teachers, like perhaps it's, you know, Spanish or art or whatever, some of the traditional singletons that people have, to kind of create opportunities for our teachers to connect, either through technology or if it's a close neighboring district, to be able to do that across district lines. So that's something that we're working on at CISA.
I would say that yes, I echo everything Ben said as far as staff are itching for that, which is always good when you talk about how do you motivate and create that shared vision, and when they're asking for it, we want to provide it if possible, if it aligns with where we're headed. And we actually at Evergreen have embedded some vertical days between grade level PLCs at our staff meeting, talking specifically right now about math and embedding math practices, because there's no other time for that to happen right now, so we're using staff meeting time. But you know, I think that not only Holman, but other districts around the area have done a nice job of allowing some time for 5th grade to connect with 6th grade and 8th grade to connect with 9th grade, and bridging those different buildings, I'll say, different levels. However, once or twice a year isn't enough, and we all know that, so that's something that I think is still a work in progress for many of us.
Because we're a small district, we have to do the vertical one. K-8 math meeting for PLC. I mean, we have to do that. When you only have 2 teachers in a grade, I mean, grade level PLCs are tough to pull off. You know, it's not just PLC, so we do it more. Language arts, science.
Another piece of that we found successful this year was actually having some of our high school teachers go to the middle school to shadow students, and then likewise for middle school to go to the high school, middle school math teacher come to the high school. I mean, it leads to more familiarity with people, which makes a better conversation and more trust, and B, it leads to understanding of differences. Because obviously a middle school is different than a high school is different than an elementary school.
Sorry, Jen, I have one quick question. sorry to go off the agenda, but it kind of goes along with that question. Do you see any reason to have, I guess maybe Rachel, you can speak to this because there's quite a few elementary schools. Do you ever work with the other principals to figure out what they're doing to try to kind of get together, collaborate, and make it so that if a student, as a parent, you know, if my son or my daughter go to your school versus another school, that they'll get the same quality education? Is there a drive for that?
Yes, and that's something that personally I'm pretty passionate about, being Director of Instruction in GPT. Guaranteed and Viable Curriculum was huge to me to build that understanding. And I'm happy to say in Pullman it exists and I didn't have to fight as hard. But yes, there's a lot of conversation around if Josh's daughter is at Prairie View and then they move into Evergreen Boundaries, she shouldn't be repeating or missing content. And so just going back to that guaranteed and viable curriculum across the district. And as principals, we say we need too much, yet we'd like to need more so that we can ensure that alignment.
So you have like cross-district, like if you're at Evergreen, the third grade teachers will meet with third grade teachers from Viking will meet with the third grade
Yep,
teachers.
so
from
every
Viking.
early release, our district grade level PLCs come together. So all third grade teachers are together, all cross-cat special ed teachers are together, all CD, more CD specialized special ed teachers are together. And it's got its pros and cons.
Yeah, I bet.
Our PLCs are bigger, harder to manage, and every building, sure, we have similar goals all aligned to our district goals, but if Evergreen's math scores are not great and Prairie View's reading scores are not great, well then they're focusing a little more on reading, we're focusing a little more on math. You might be a little further along in PLC development than we are, RTI, all of those things, and so those differences definitely come through when you bring 4 different staffs together for a 2-hour chunk of time. But as far as curricular-wise, it's hugely beneficial.
In a perfect world, everyone would follow the norms of a PLC and the meetings would run like systematically. How do you address the staff that do not follow those norms? And then how do you help like scaffold a teacher who has not dealt well with the change?
I think one important piece of that is how do you find out that they are not following the norms? Because you may find out from another staff member that they're not following the norms, and then now you've got the situation of how are you going to address that? Okay. If I see someone not following the norms, the smoothest way to deal with that is to be there to see it yourself. Okay? Because I would rather have a difficult conversation end in a productive conversation based off of something I saw. Because now that conversation is between us. I do not want to have that conversation based off of something someone else told me. You can be mad at me, don't be mad at each other. That's being mad at each other is a much bigger problem than if you're mad at me. I can deal with that. We'll work that out. You know, our relationship should be on pretty good grounds, and you might be mad at me for a couple days, but we'll keep working on that. But if you have that dissension in the team and you're managing, that's much more difficult to manage. So for me, it's the approach you take once you find out.
I'd also say that we are not holding each other accountable if we're coming and reporting, or that accountability is not working. But more often than not, I'm happy to say we're just not holding each other accountable, because that's a learning. I read over there, principal as a staff developer, so I can help build that in staff. But, and that's a tough thing. And so I know at Evergreen right now, we've been spending every little bit of time we have going through the Mike Matos, are we a group or a team?
Yeah, we're doing that too.
Series. And fortunately, I have somebody like Wendy who purchases it for the district, so I don't have to keep checking it out from CISA. And that's really about setting team norms, holding holding each other accountable, because it goes back to all of the other questions as far as why are we really here? And it's for the students. And so if I can't hold you accountable, then we can't truly function as a professional learning community. And so I agree with Ben. If somebody comes to me, I always first say, how have you handled this? What have you done? And more often than not, they say, yeah, I think I can have that conversation. And they go back and try it. And if it's beyond that, then I'm also trying to see for myself.
What are some of the toughest decisions you make as staff? I'm sure you just elaborate a little bit on that right now. And what do you say in those difficult conversations when staff are not engaged or haven't maintained that relationship or the hope to improvement through vision?
I would say that you need to be making positive deposits in that relationship, just like any other relationship, before that moment, and that'll have a big impact on that conversation. So the conversation that you have with them, if there is a concern, it shouldn't just be about that. There should be a history in the dynamics of your relationship. There should have been many positive conversations before that. That will have an impact on that. Also, don't make it personal. Make it just about the issue. Have something specific if there is a concern. Okay.
To back up one step, whenever I'm interviewing teachers, if I get the sense that as a candidate that, well, Ben, he looks like a great teacher, but I don't think he's gonna play well with others, you know, I'll pass on him for that reason. And if I really get that sense, I'll ask the references and try to ferret out if that is a concern or not. Because simply put, it's such a required aspect of teaching, I think, in 2016, that if you can't do that, you know, maybe there's a better spot for you elsewhere. So that's one piece that I really have learned to try to ferret out. The other piece is if those conversations can happen among team members first, that's obviously the best spot for them to happen. And like Ben, I like to be able to see the norm being violated, so it's coming from me. But I think the biggest thing is you can't duck the difficult conversation as an administrator. When it's time to put in your calendar to go see that person during their prep and shut the door and just have the conversation. I always feel better after the conversation's been had. I think sometimes other people do too, like finally it's been addressed, like I knew you were gonna come talk to me, so now it's over. Other times, probably not, probably get sworn at as I walk out, but I think you have to be willing to have the conversation and just understand that I've only met one person in my life who really enjoys conflict. I used to teach with him next door in Pulaski. Wonderful guy, but he loved conflict. I don't think anyone else does, but it's part of what I think has to happen, and it's difficult.
Confrontation is part of the job. And nobody likes it, except for maybe the guy you know. But you just have to approach it with courage. And I think you have to approach that staff member with consideration too. And I think how you handle it, how you approach it, has to be very respectful and be very professional. And I think if you convey that to that staff member through body language, through your words, through hearing, they'll get that and they'll understand that. And I think that's so important, but you can't avoid it. Because if you avoid it, you got more problems on your hands later.
One of my supervisors is sitting in the back of the room, and yesterday came in and shut the door and said, let's talk about what you said last week in this specific meeting, and called me out on something that I shouldn't have done. And absolutely, I mean, I don't think Roger enjoyed it, but at the same time, maybe he did. But it's something that, I think at all levels have to be part of it.
And what we talked about last week, is shared vision, I think is important too, is what you're doing in your PLC, helping us get to that shared vision, whatever it is. That's that accounting piece that Rachel's talking about too. That's something I took from her. To not make it personal. Like, nope, this is what we're doing.
Well, your questions go back and forth from targeting you and then referring to us as they. And